The Halo speedrunning community is one of the most active and welcoming speedrunning communities out there. Over 20 years of the best first-person shooters ever made. And Halo 4 and Halo Wars. And anyways, Halo Infinite has finally come out, and with over 6 years of anticipation since the last release, it has a lot of eyes on it. In the recent years since 5's release, the community has grown a ton, and it's finally time for the new game to be put to the test. When a new game is released in a series as beloved and as active as Halo, nearly everyone wants a crack at figuring out what makes the game tick. And with this iteration being open world take on the beloved FPS, there's a lot to unpack. Everything from rocket launchers, modifier skulls, grapple hooks to tanks. All of these things interacting in an open world. Open worlds are known for producing many glitchy and weird interactions. I mean, hell, look at Breath of the Wild. To top it off, it also has Halo physics, so who knows what kind of crazy stuff can be found if the right effort was put into it. Well, only 1 week later, and I returned with the boys with the spoils. Turns out, just 5 days after release, we found a ton of stuff that turns Halo Infinite into an absolute sandbox of possibilities. And most of it is thanks to this guy right here, the Fusion Coil. Usually in Halo, Fusion Coils are your friendly neighborhood explosive canisters, used to lag those poor Xbox 360s back in Halo 3 Forge. But in Infinite, they are your best friend, greatest enemy, and the key to all things speed. This little guy has huge implications for the whole game, but since this game is new, I'm only going to be talking about the first few missions, so no need to worry about too many spoilers. The first mission of the game has Chief reasserting his dominance over the Banished by plowing through his old crib, curb stomping anyone in his way. Once he gets to the front of the ship, he kills everyone in sight, and then he decides he's going to blow up the ship and then escape. So obviously, he's going to initiate the self-destruct sequence and start running.
Okay, and you can do that? No. New plan.
Instead of doing all that slow stuff, I spent a lot of my time messing around with fusion coils, because as it turns out, throwing them at your enemies isn't the only way you can use them. Hell, it's not even the best way you can use them. If you stand on top of the fusion coil and grapple hook it into yourself, you will give yourself the coil speed with the grapple. The speed from the grapple launches the coil into you, and if you land feet first on top of the coil, it actually has collision. If you do it right, you can shoot yourself into the ceiling like this. Once we discovered this, we quickly sought out a way to use it to get out of the map. Using previous knowledge obtained from testing in older Halo games, we can assume that the game is running on a tick-based system, which means that it checks for the physics updates every set amount of times in a second. This includes things like collision with the walls or ceiling. If you're moving fast enough, you can actually move Master Chief through a wall in between the times where the game checks for collision. By moving this fast, you can actually outpace the systems in place for keeping you in bounds. By grappling the fusion coil into your feet the right way, you can give yourself insane speed. We call this a coil launch. If you do this in very specific circumstances and you have a really good launch, you can perform what we call a fusion coil clip. The first person I saw with a video of this is Mocha, who clipped out of bounds in the roof of the first mission. If you don't know, fusion coils are absolutely everywhere in Halo Infinite, so using them to get out of bounds would instantly break the game wide open, leading to many sequence breaks and tons of time save. But quickly a problem emerged. Even though it was possible to get on the roof of the level, it was really hard. While coil clips are possible in the first few days, they have proved to be really difficult to replicate consistently, especially with the early setups. What setups did work would soon run into another problem, however. When it comes to learning about new games from a speedrunning perspective, it really is the Wild West. There are no rules of engagement. Everyone is just trying to obtain as much information about the game as physically possible, testing everything from how frame rate affects the game's physics to what weapons deal the most damage. No one is really sure what is the most effective, or what will even be useful. But practically everyone is on the same page about one thing. They want to help. There is really nothing like jumping on a brand new game and figuring out how it ticks, reverse engineering everything about it and breaking it apart piece by piece. You could have a chance to be absolutely integral in the development of the speedrun and make your mark forever. That's why personally, it's my favorite thing in speedrunning, and I always put a lot of time and effort into the new releases that interest me. Once I saw the coil launches and clips, I was like, I'm down like a clown, and I'm going to help route at this game. My personal experience from routing games tells me that out-of-bounds traversal is my specialty, so that's what I focused on. I quickly helped find a consistent way to get out of bounds on the first mission. By putting the fusion coil in this corner by the door, we can launch into the ceiling that is sloped. The slope on the ceiling redirects the speed, and since there is no splatter damage in this game, you just get all that speed redirected into the wall. If I do it right, I'll get stuck inside the wall as the game tries to push me out of it. And this time I can wait for my grapple to recharge and then use it to get on top of the level. However, if I do it wrong, I'll get too much speed and fly right through the wall Mach 10. When this happens, my game freezes, and it won't allow me to move anymore, only to be recovered by quitting to the main menu and loading back in. That's what I get for cheating, I guess. But this led me to make a really important discovery. Every game has different rules for how their out-of-bounds systems work. In some games like Dead Space, it's free reign. You can go anywhere and do basically whatever you want. And other games will just implode as soon as you exit the intended play area. Halo Infinite seems to have a rather unusual and interesting rules for how the out-of-bounds works. Every map is a collection of 3D models called a BSP. These are imported into the game engine in segments. Each level has a lot of BSPs connected to each other, usually through doorways. In the engine that Halo Infinite is made up in, the BSPs have a bounding box of the play area outside them. Some of these bounding boxes are really tight on the actual model of the BSP, while others are extended nearly infinitely in all directions. Colliding with the edges of these play areas causes the freezing. So when traversing and out of bounds, the player must stay within these invisible play spaces at all times. Thankfully, you can transfer what BSP the game thinks you're on by colliding with the actual model of the next BSP. So if you walk over a doorway, then it will update, moving the bounding box to the next area. This is all information that was totally unknown in the first few days, but thanks to myself and a few other awesome people in the haloruns Discord, we managed to piece together an understanding of how it works together, and started to use it to find some really awesome skips. I managed to dive underneath the edges of the play area all the way to this cutscene, skipping one small fight. Not much of a time save, but it was possibly the first fully functioning skip in the game that utilized out of bounds movement. This would have been marginally faster, at least on Legendary, if it was done first try, and I was pretty stoked until someone dropped this. This absolute unit just walked up to the door that you come back through on the way back and punched clean through it. This, for some reason, loads the backtracking section of the level and allows you to walk behind these T-posing brutes. Once down the hallway, you hit the trigger that transforms the room you were just in into the escape sequence, saving over 4 minutes and a ton of required combat. Not only is the skip much faster, skipping more of the level and putting you closer to the end of it, but it also is infinitely easier. You actually just punched this wall 3 times. You should try it. After Chief is saved by this funny pelican man, we arrive at the second level and we start the best meme of this speedrun. What was once a fusion coil is now a companion coil, because we are basically going to be carrying this thing through the whole rest of the game with us. Because you can still grapple with it in your hand, your movement is almost just as fast if you carry it. And when you do a coil launch, you retrieve the coil mid-air, allowing you to do another run right when you land. By holding a coil into the level end trigger on the first mission, you can start the second mission with a coil at the start. This coil is my new best friend, and you could be too if you subscribe. Right at the start of the level, we're going to do something that a friend of mine, Zarian, figured out, called a self-setup coil launch. By dropping the fusion coil straight up in the air and switching weapons to do so, you can move in front of it, setting it up for a vertical launch, with no walls to set it up on. This makes it possible to get insane speed wherever you want at any time, as long as the floor is flat. It was also discovered that you can aim the coil at a 45-degree angle. This allows for more distance to be covered with a coil launch, and it can also be done on just yourself. But this is a lot harder. After a few coil launches and a boss fight, we enter into the open world. Well, not quite. We have to make a few pit stops first to grab some Spartan cores, upgrading our grapple hook, and grab this little Easter egg beauty. If you go to the top of this gun turret and swap weapons with the tip, you get what is essentially the Scarab gun from Halo 2. It's a gun that has infinite ammo and shoots tank bullets. This thing is pretty divisive at the moment and will probably cause a few categories to be added to the game. But for testing, it's amazing because it makes short work of basically everything. Once we clear this sector, we head into the true open world and clear this FOB. Once not Cortana finally shuts up, we are going to yeet all the way to the tower.
What? There?
Now that we're in the open world proper, I can show you what really makes the fusion coils so powerful. Yeah, you can go fast, but it's really not clear just how fast you can go until you're outside. With this 45-degree angle setup that I made, you can launch all the way to the tower by getting something we speedrunners have been calling terminal velocity. In real life, terminal velocity is a term used to describe the top speed of an object as it falls into Earth's atmosphere. Without outside interaction, it can't possibly fall any faster than its terminal velocity. In Halo Infinite, terminal velocity describes the way the physics deal with objects moving at very high speeds. Once you reach a certain speed, you stop accelerating. But in this instance, you also stop decelerating. At top speeds, you simply lose air resistance and gravitational pull entirely. You also lose the ability to steer where you're going, so you'll just fly infinitely in the direction that you launched until you hit a wall, or the ceiling. In this instance, you intend to hit the ceiling, so that you can bounce off of it and recoil into the tower. This launch saves about 30 seconds or more compared to just driving there, and also, it's like the coolest thing I've ever done. Just because you hit terminal velocity though, doesn't mean you've hit the top speed, however. Terminal velocity requires high speed, but it isn't the speed cap. You can go much faster, especially with fusion coil launches that do what we call a redirect. After completing the tower, you need to go to the excavation site, and it lowers a bridge onto the next island. The map is divided into multiple islands with gaps between them. If you try to launch over the gap to the next island, you hit an invisible wall, and then you fall to your death. Once the tower is beaten, this bridge goes down, unlocking a new area. However, the only spot on the map where the invisible wall disappears is just above the bridge. This makes getting to the excavation site quickly with a coil launch kind of hard, since all of the fast redirects shoot you slightly at wrong angles. That is, until I found this one. This trick saves over a minute in just travel time alone, but it is very precise. Coil redirect launches are deterministic. All physics interactions in Halo games are. That means it's entirely possible to analyze every factor and make something work exactly the way it's supposed to. If you get the perfect angle, the perfect speed, and stand in the perfect spot, you can consistently replicate the launch. Thankfully, this one is not pixel perfect or anything. It's just really precise. With how open-ended this game is, though, it's going to be really interesting to see just how many crazy and awesome fusion coil launch setups we're going to see in this game's future. But thankfully, when it comes to getting out of bounds, we found a more elegant solution. What can be more elegant than punching the ever-loving shit out of the ground? As it turns out, the third upgrade for the grappling hook, the ground pound, can easily clip you out of the ground if done at the right angle and in the right scenarios. This has absolutely blown open the linear levels of this game. Excavation Site has you activating a laser, then blowing it up by breaking all of the power cells around the area. Then you go back up the grav lift and fight a boss. For Legendary, this would have been an insanely difficult and long level, but now you can just fly across the map right to where you need to be, grab the last Spire Core that you need for ground pound, then just clip right through the floor. It seems the downward slopes of the deployable cover pushes the Chief under the map when he starts to recover from the ground pound. That, with the combined velocity of the move itself, pushes you under the map. From here, some small parkour can be done to land on top of the end level trigger for Excavation Site. On top of the door, you can do a straight vertical ground pound, getting yourself stuck between a few different walls. Since the walls don't want you to be inside them, they actively try to push you out. This combined force is enough to push Chief back to bounds, and lets him end Excavation Site without fighting anyone at all. A true pacifist run is in the making here. Once we are inside, we are once again out of the open world, and stuck inside some very restricting play areas. Up ahead is the deployable cover upgrade, but that's pretty much useless, so we just go right out of this joint. This is the area where the super important discovery was made. You can ground pound clip through the floor using the edge of movable objects. This allows for tons of more nuanced setups. Basically anywhere that this box exists, you can clip to the floor. Clipping like this is scary because if you clip too fast, you'll actually fall faster than your grapple hook can recharge, making it impossible to save yourself from falling out of the play area, making yourself completely stuck. Once out of bounds, you can Spider-Man swing into the next few rooms and then onto the roof, where you jump across this gap and clip back and bounds through the top of the door. This skips the cutscene for collecting the deployable cover, is faster than normally walking, and skips the first room that requires you to collect the seed to open the door. Unfortunately, ground pound clips don't replace every skip on interior levels though. After going through the required combat room, you end up in this library-esque section that has the player run down a spiral of the bottom of the area. There is a big glass window that separates the two play areas, and since the levels are all right on top of each other, the play areas are artificially close to each other, preventing any out-of-bounds shenanigans. However, if you're a god gamer, which, let's be real, that's why you're all here, you can do this trick known as glass squatch clip, found by my homie Sasquatch Sensei. This skips all of the downward spiral, saving over a minute on easy and multiple minutes on legendary. Now that Implement is out of your recommended, the speeding is over, because there hasn't been any more tricks found for the rest of this level. The play barriers so far have proven to be too difficult to get around. Many more skips of tricks have been found throughout the game, and even a whole week later, there are still more than 10 people in the voice channel sharing ideas, strategies, and theory crafting what could be the next revolution in Halo Infinite speedrunning. These times are the most exciting, fast-paced times in speedrunning. Sitting for hours in voice chat, punching walls over and over again until I wish I could fall off the map in real life. It's something I wouldn't miss for the world. I'm super excited to see where this game goes in the future. Currently, the run is looking like it'll be around 1.5 hours, on easy at least. A little bit longer on legendary. If you would like to chill and hang out, then I stream most days on Twitch, link in the description. Maybe you could be there when we together break this game. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to support me on Patreon like these fine folks do here, the link is also in the description. Have a beautiful day.